Hey everyone, and welcome to our crash course on idioms. Let's be real, idioms are weird. They're these phrases that somehow wormed their way into our language, and they make absolutely zero sense on the surface. I mean, kick the bucket? Who decided that meant to die? And why a bucket? But as nonsensical as they may seem, idioms are an essential part of sounding fluent and natural, especially in English. Teaching them, however, can feel a bit like herding cats. Your students might understand the individual words, but put them together and you're met with blank stares. But don't worry, it's not an impossible task. In this video, we're going to equip you with a whole arsenal of strategies to make idioms less intimidating and more accessible for your students. All right, let's start with the MVPs of the idiom world, the ones that pop up in casual conversation all the time. We're talking about phrases like piece of cake, meaning something easy, cost an arm and a leg, meaning very expensive, or hit the nail on the head, meaning to be exactly right. You know, the idioms that would make a teenager from a Shakespearean play scratch their head and say, "Hath the English language gone mad?" The truth is, these common idioms are like the foundation of a house. Once your students have a good grasp of these, they can start building upon that knowledge and tackling the more obscure ones. Plus, they'll start noticing these idioms everywhere, which is kind of like a superpower. Right, so how do you make sure these common idioms stick? That's where our next few chapters come in handy. Remember those colorful cards that got us through countless vocabulary quizzes? Well, they're about to become your new best friend again. Flashcards are like the Swiss Army knives of language learning. They're simple, portable, and incredibly effective for memorization. Here's how to use them for idioms. On one side, write the idiom itself, the weirder the better. On the other side, write its meaning in clear, concise language. But here's the pro tip. Don't just write the definition. Give an example sentence too. That way, students can see the idiom in action, like a mini context clue. Trust me, a little bit of flashcard magic can go a long way in making those idioms stick. Our brains love patterns. We're hardwired to seek them out, which is why organizing information into categories makes it so much easier to remember. So instead of throwing a jumbled mess of idioms at your students, why not group them by themes? You could have a category for emotions where you'd put idioms like feeling blue or over the moon, or a category for actions with idioms like spill the beans or call it a day. You can even get creative with categories like animals, food, or sports. The possibilities are endless, and the best part is this method allows students to make connections between different idioms, which deepens their understanding. Okay, I know what you're thinking. John, you want me to assign even more reading? Hear me out. Reading, especially fiction, is like a treasure hunt for idioms. Authors love to sprinkle them throughout their writing to add color and personality to their characters' voices. Encourage your students to be idiom detectives. As they read, have them highlight or jot down any unfamiliar phrases they come across. Then they can work together to decipher their meanings from the context. This not only expands their vocabulary, but also helps them see how idioms are used naturally in different situations. Who said learning idioms can't be entertaining? Movies and TV shows are teeming with idiomatic expressions, often delivered with perfect comedic timing. Encourage your students to pay attention to the dialogue, especially in comedies or shows set in modern times. You can even turn it into a fun classroom activity. Choose a movie or an episode of a show together and have students note down any idioms they hear. Then discuss their meanings and how they contribute to the scene. It's a great way to make learning interactive and engaging. Music is another fantastic resource for idiom exploration. Songwriters are masters of wordplay, and they often weave idioms into their lyrics to create vivid imagery and evoke emotions. Create a playlist of songs that feature idioms and play them in class. You can have students listen for specific idioms, analyze their meanings in the context of the song, or even rewrite verses using different idioms. It's a fun and engaging way to tap into their creativity while reinforcing their understanding of idiomatic expressions. Here's the thing about idioms. You can memorize a million flashcards, but if you don't actually use them in conversation, they'll just sit there in your brain gathering dust. The key is to create a safe and encouraging environment where students feel comfortable experimenting with idioms, even if they make mistakes. Encourage them to to incorporate idioms into their daily conversations, presentations, or even role-playing activities. The more they practice, the more natural and intuitive using idioms will become. Speaking of practice, what better way to hone those idiom skills than by chatting with native speakers? Language exchange programs are like gold mines for language learners. They provide a platform for students to connect with people from English-speaking countries and practice their conversational skills in a relaxed and authentic setting. Encourage your students to join online language exchange groups or find a partner they can practice with regularly. It's an invaluable opportunity to learn new idioms, refine their pronunciation, and gain confidence in their abilities. Remember that feeling when you finally nail a difficult concept? It's like a tiny victory dance in your brain. Now imagine if there was a way to bottle that feeling and revisit it whenever you needed a confidence boost. Enter the Idiom Journal. This isn't your typical Dear Diary situation. Encourage your students to keep a dedicated notebook where they write down new idioms they encounter, along with their meanings and example sentences. But here's the fun part. Have them use these idioms to write short stories, poems, or even song lyrics. It's a creative outlet that reinforces their understanding and makes learning a truly personal experience. Ever wonder how on earth we ended up with phrases like raining cats and dogs or bite the bullet? Exploring the origins of idioms can be like taking a trip down the rabbit hole of language history, and it can make those seemingly bizarre phrases a whole lot more memorable. Share these etymological tidbits with your students. For example, raining cats and dogs is thought to originate from a time when houses had thatched roofs, and heavy rain would often drive animals seeking shelter down people's chimneys. Suddenly the idiom makes a lot more sense, right? We live in a digital age, and there's a plethora of online resources dedicated to making idiom learning fun and accessible. Websites and apps like Memrise, Babbel, and Duolingo offer interactive quizzes, games, and flashcards specifically designed to help users master idioms. Encourage your students to explore these resources and incorporate them into their study routine. They provide a fun and engaging way to reinforce their learning and track their progress. Who doesn't love a good game? Games are a fantastic way to make learning idioms interactive, engaging, and, dare I say, enjoyable. Incorporate idiom-based games into your classroom activities. You can play charades, Pictionary, Taboo, or even create your own board game where players have to use idioms correctly to advance. These games not only reinforce their understanding, but also foster teamwork and communication skills. Learning a language can feel like climbing a mountain, and sometimes we all need a little extra motivation to keep going. Encourage your students to set realistic goals for their idiom learning journey. They could aim to learn a certain number of idioms each week or month, or challenge themselves to use a specific idiom in a conversation. Having clear goals provides a sense of purpose and accomplishment, making the learning process more rewarding. Learning a language, especially its idiomatic expressions, is a marathon, not a sprint. Remind your students that it's okay to stumble, make mistakes, and feel confused at times. Encourage them to be patient with themselves and celebrate their progress, no matter how small. Learning idioms takes time and consistent effort, but the rewards of fluency and cultural understanding are well worth the journey. Our brains are like sieves, and it's easy for information to slip through the cracks if we don't revisit it regularly. Encourage your students to make reviewing idioms a regular part of their study routine. They can revisit their flashcards, reread their journal entries, or even quiz each other on previously learned idioms. Regular review reinforces their understanding and helps those tricky phrases stick in their long-term memory. And there you have it, a crash course on conquering the wild world of English idioms. We've covered everything from flashcards to language exchanges, proving that learning idioms doesn't have to be a pain in the neck. Remember, the key is to make it fun, engaging, and relevant to your students' lives. So go forth, spread the idiom love, and watch your students' language skills reach new heights. Don't forget to like this video if you found it helpful, subscribe to our channel for more educational content, and share these tips with your fellow teachers.